Okay, hello again, everyone. My name is Rose, for those of you just joining. My name is Rose. I am the community educator at Women's Advocates. If you have any questions, comments, leave them in the chat as we go. I will be happy to answer them for you. If I do not know the answer to your question, I will make sure I get you the answer some way, somehow. Somebody out there will know. I will get it for you. But today we're talking all about safety planning when working with victim survivors of domestic violence. What does safety planning look like? We'll go into what that looks like and sounds like. We'll dive into examples of our own personalized safety planning at Women's Advocates and talk more about that. But if you have questions, comments, leave them in the chat. Otherwise, I will get us started. So, if you've been to our webinars before, you would have seen this. You've seen me probably talk about this a lot, just kind of introducing who we are at Women's Advocates. If it's your first time new here, this is who we are. We are Women's Advocates. We are a domestic violence shelter located in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we offer just all sorts of safety help for victim survivors of domestic violence, ranging from education, exactly what we are doing right now, to educate the public about domestic violence. A shelter, we are a shelter, so we offer shelter spaces, housing stability services, childcare services, and we're doing a lot to help victim survivors of domestic violence. We also have a pet foster program now, where folks who are trying to escape abuse, if they have pets, can let us know about that. We will find a pet foster program or pet foster to help take care of their pets as they try to get away from all of the abuse that they are going through. And again, we offer like childcare services as well, therapy, counseling for folks who stay in our shelter. So we do all sorts of safety work with victim survivors. And we've been here for almost over 50 years now, actually. We've been here for over 50 years. And we're still doing our best to help victim survivors break the cycle of domestic violence, get away from abuse, and kind of promote healthy relationships. And by talking about safety planning today, we're just diving a little bit more into how you can help victim survivors on their journey. On the chat, I just copy and pasted our website. It's just wadvocates.org. I see you can't click on it, but if you want to visit our website to learn more about us, to see more resources that we may offer, it's just wadvocates.org or womensadvocates.org. Feel free to browse our website, learn about us. If you have questions about us, feel free to ask. This next thing I'm going to type into the chat is our land acknowledgement. I'm going to read it out loud for us before we begin here. It says, Women's Advocates work takes place on Dakota land. The area that is now St. Paul was stolen from the Dakota people by the American government through centuries of wars, broken treaties, and acts of cultural genocide. Through incredible perseverance and resistance, the Dakota are still here and strong. Native women and girls face the highest risk of domestic violence, sexual assault, and intimate partner homicide. We express our gratitude for the Indigenous-led organizations who are working each day towards a world without domestic and sexual violence. And as an organization, we commit ourselves to supporting tribal sovereignty with the same fervor that we support the self-sovereignty of victim survivors. Again, the link to the full land acknowledgement is in the chat. If you'd like to click on that and check that out, feel free to do so. So, in the time that we have together, I am going to launch a poll. See if it's going to work with me. Okay. There it is. You should be able to see it. What brings you to this webinar? No right or wrong answers. Low stakes. Feel free to answer that for me. It's just nice for me to gauge where everybody is at. And as you do that, we are going to be diving into 3 different parts for today's webinar. Part 1, holistic safety, understanding the dimensions and importance of safety planning. And then we'll dive into part 2. So what are the basics of safety planning? And then part 3 is when we are going to go into creating a holistic safety plan. This is where we will dive into the examples and talk more about our personalized safety planning at Women's Advocates, what it looks like. But yeah, that is what we have on the agenda. I'll give us a couple more seconds to take the poll, and then I will end it and share the results with everyone. And if you're just joining now, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. If you have questions, comments, leave them in the chat for me. I'm going to end the poll now. Thank you, everybody, for taking the poll. Sharing the results. Again, no right or wrong answers. So what brings you to this webinar? We have answers all across the board, with the most answered ones being, I want to learn how to create a safety plan with survivors, and I want to learn how to prioritize safety of my clients. Yeah, and as we go, again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. I thank you all for taking that poll. There's going to be a couple more coming your way as we go, so look out for those. But let's dive into part 1. Dimensions of safety. Perfect. Okay, on the screen is a very basic definition of safety. So many of us may agree that safety is a state of being free from harm or danger. And we assert that it is also the presence of 3 different kinds of safety, the 3 that we see on the screen. We have internal safety, which involves a regulated nervous system, where we're not in flight, fight, freeze, or fawn mode. It means we recognize when we're moving out of our window of tolerance and into a state of hyper and hypoarousal. External safety, which refers to being in a safe environment. It means knowing where we can physically go if something were to happen, knowing that we are safe there if something were to happen. Then we have relational safety. So it includes having people we can kind of depend on, right? Who can support us, connect with us, and hold space for us. This could be friends, family members, people we love, people we trust. So when we talk about safety, a lot of times we are including the freedom to express yourself fully and authentically, changing your location, appearance, and attitude and or beliefs when you wish to do so. Share any dissatisfaction with a loved one's actions. Share your personal insecurities and fears without fearing that it may be used against you. Having a conversation without it escalating to a full-blown argument. If you are able to do all of this without any fear that your safety, your well-being might be in jeopardy, you are safe. You feel safe in your life, and the people around you, and the things that you're interested in. You're able to share them freely, openly, without feeling like you will be judged. Then, of course, we have unsafety, the opposite side of the spectrum. Feelings of unsafety, whether physical or emotional or something else, are pervasive in the lives of victim survivors. So physically, you're exposed to harmful or risky situations. Your bodily autonomy has been compromised in some way. Emotional unsafety can be harder to point out and oftentimes neglected. And it's that feeling that something's wrong and that you aren't being respected or honored for who you are, and that you might even be in danger. Danger in ways that can harm your bodily autonomy, danger in ways that can lead to death as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those in today's training as we go. But feelings of unsafety, a state of being exposed to or at risk for or being harmed or in danger in some way, physical unsafety, and emotional unsafety. A lot of times when we talk about domestic violence and getting folks to safety, we immediately focus on the physical aspect of things, which is important, yes, but afterwards, we also want to talk about emotional safety as well. And we're going to dive into a lot of that as we go today. So On the screen, we just see what it's like when someone does feel safe and when someone feels unsafe. So when you are safe, you can regulate your emotions and pause before reacting. If you feel often unsafe, you're unable to regulate your emotional states. Oftentimes you're impulsive with what you say and your actions. Again, if you feel safe, you can have difficult conversations without name calling or insulting. Again, tying right to the first one, pausing before reacting, knowing what to say, thinking twice before you speak. If you feel unsafe, difficulty communicating leads to frustration and name calling. Now, certain people may be shy, they might not be great with communication, doesn't automatically mean that they are unsafe. But when we are working with victim survivors, we want to just be wary of the way that they talk and how they act, especially if you don't know that they are a victim survivor of domestic violence, that something might be happening. For example, lack of safe trust causes defensiveness. Oftentimes, they bring up the past, they keep score, attempts to hurt other people in order to be quote unquote right all the time, and assumes others' intentions, talks over them, or is oftentimes egocentric. Sometimes they don't talk at all. People will speak for them, over them. Just small things here and there that we want to pick up when working with victim survivors, or if you know anybody in your personal lives who may be going through abuse. The dimensions of holistic safety. Holistic means all-encompassing, so treating the whole person rather than strictly just the physical body, or treating the immediate issue at hand. Again, we want to get folks to physical safety, yes. We want to make sure that they are physically safe and away from abuse, yes. But we want to focus on a lot more as well beyond that. So holistic safety, that's when that comes in. Your social safety, your emotional safety, and the one that's oftentimes most neglected is your emotional safety. People tend to not think about it. If they do, as long as they're physically away from the abuse or the abusive individual, then they should be okay. And then they kind of neglect their emotional safety. And to a lot of people working with victim survivors tend to neglect the emotional well-being of victim survivors as well. And so when we are working with victim survivors, we want to make sure that we are tackling a lot of these different aspects of well-being, to digital safety as well, financial safety, and intellectual safety. I am going to launch another poll for us for the dimensions of safety. Which dimension of safety do you want to pay extra attention to in your next interaction with a client survivor? And this could be somebody that you work with, a client, or it could be a friend or family member, anybody really. It could be yourself even. But I'll give us a couple of seconds to take that poll and then I'll share the results. But what do you want to focus on the most? I'm going to go on to the last slide just so people can see physical safety, social safety, emotional safety, and digital safety, financial safety, and intellectual safety. A couple more seconds for folks to take the poll. Okay. Thank you all for taking the poll. Here are the results. So again, we got a pretty good mix of answers. No right or wrong answers here either. But most people said digital and emotional. Good to know. And if you would like to state your reasons in the chat, by all means, feel free to do so. I'd love to see what folks are thinking. And again, no right or wrong answers. Whatever it is that you want to pay extra attention to. Thank you for taking that poll for me. Good for me to gauge where everybody's at. But just a little bit more about holistic safety. It's really important for us to keep holistic safety in mind when working with survivors, because sometimes we spend most of our energy on helping them achieve physical safety. So that includes things like writing restraining orders, finding safe shelter, walking through escape routes, police reporting, which is all very important to do in order to help somebody achieve that safety. But abuse creates more than physical scars, and we want to emphasize that because it's important for us to explore other dimensions of safety and well-beings when working with victim survivors. I see somebody have their hands up because you can't talk because you're unmuted. Can you leave your questions in the chat for me? Or if you'd like to use the Q&A feature, feel free to do that as well. But yeah, this is why we want to focus on holistic safety, where we are able to physically help folks, but we also want to focus on helping them beyond that as well. And like what a lot of you kind of said in the poll that we took just now, wanted to focus a little bit more on emotional safety and digital safety. Depending on who you work with and the specific needs of these individuals, you might want to focus on, spiritual safety or financial safety, right? So a lot of people's safety goes beyond just physical, and we want to make that known and emphasize how important that is to help a lot of folks when working with them. So we have what we want to say for the survivors and for advocates. Even if you don't work in domestic violence, you might know somebody who's going through abuse. It's still useful to know how to safety plan and holistic safety and how that plays all into this. So for survivors, abuse creates more than physical scars, and holistic safety addresses impacts of domestic violence in all areas of life. And for advocates, for a lot of us, I'm assuming, holding difficult stories requires emotional strength and not easily addressed by physical safety alone. Good to keep in mind and take care of ourselves as well as advocates when we are working with victim survivors, trying to tackle all of these all at once, right? The damage has been done, a lot has been done. This person, the victim survivor, is going through a lot of trauma from the abuse that they've endured. And now as advocates helping them, we are kind of wanting to tackle everything all at once. So it can be a lot. Taking care of yourself is also very important. We have safety and survivorship here. So another really important note to remember when we are working with a victim survivor, whether to kind of plan for safety or plan even something as simple as a grocery list. We want to avoid recreating the controlling dynamics of an abusive relationship. So we do this by prioritizing a victim survivor's ability to make their own decisions. A big thing that we do here at Women's Advocates is allowing victim survivors to make their own choices, from big decisions to small decisions, really, where they want to work, where they want to live, getting a stable job, having stable housing, or choosing something as simple as vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, right? Letting them get that moment to make their own choices. And in the moment with all the small choices, it doesn't seem like a lot, but over time, as that builds, the victim survivor kind of gains back their sense of agency, and they're able to make bigger life choices for themselves. So that is something that we always want to encourage at Women's Advocates, and how self-determination can oftentimes lead to safety. Knowing that they are in good hands, that they are safe, and they are able to make their own decisions and trust themselves in those decisions can lead to safer choices, safety in their lives, for themselves and their children, for their pets. So it's kind of like a domino effect. And one of the very first steps to discussing safety is being able to really identify when our safety has been compromised. So on the screen are some physical and emotional signs that you or someone you're working with or someone you know might be feeling unsafe or experiencing feelings of unsafety. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but we can kind of take a look at some and let me know if any of these stand out to you. After this presentation or this training webinar is over, you will also get access to these slides as well. So if you want to kind of go back and revisit them, you are able and free to do so. But survivors in need of emotional support may experience changes in their breathing patterns, paused or oftentimes slowed, feeling small, helpless, young and terrified, enraged, or out of control, oftentimes wanting to hide. Feeling immobilized, frozen, stuck, or thinking of extremes such as always and never. Things are always black and white. It's either good or bad, yes or no. And there's really no in between. So yeah, these are oftentimes what people will feel like physically and emotionally when they are unsafe. You can feel free to kind of read up on this and revisit this afterwards when you get access to all of the slides. But it's what it kind of looks like. So knowing that this is how people feel, I am now going to play this video about a panda. It's a rather short video. It's not too long. But I'm going to also copy and paste it into the chat in case folks want to take a look at it afterwards. But I'm going to play it for us very quickly here. I never know if the audio is ever going to work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So if somebody in the chat, can you just give me a simple yes or no? Yes, if you can hear the audio, no, if you can't. I'm going to play it, hoping it'll work with me. You are able to hear. Okay, thank you so much. Perfect. The Pandas Island of regulation. Hopefully that kind of explains a little bit more about emotional regulation, what that looks like and sounds like. Again, the link to that is in the chat if you'd like to share it or see it again. But going to move on to survivor-centered routes of safety. So there is a social worker named Jake Ernst who kind of came up with 8 routes of safety. The ones that you see on the screen right now. So this is a tool that we can kind of use to help survivors and clients identify the ways in which they can kind of access their own quote unquote regulation island, the way Panda did in the video. So each person is, of course, unique and may lean on a variety of these routes or maybe just 1 or 2. So we're going to kind of jump into all of them a little bit deeper. But we have private retreat, common humanity, inner guidance, structure and certainty, sensory experiences, quality relationships, protective measures, and closeness and proximity. So diving deeper into that, the first 4 we are going to look at is private retreat, common humanity, inner guidance, and structure and certainty. What does it look like and sound like? So for private retreat, the first one, it looks like needing quiet time alone, oftentimes using reading or music as an escapism. What that sounds like, saying stuff like, I feel better by myself, I was just lost in thought, or let me think about it for a while and get back to you, right? Taking that time away to think about it. We have common humanity, looking like being listened to and believed in, making room for joy, knowing difficulty is part of life and you have to work through it, finding out ways to work through it. What that sounds like is I am not alone in my struggles. Hearing that you matter, laughter makes my life worthwhile. We have inner guidance, looking like writing and journaling. People might find this useful, some people don't. It's really on you and your journey. Building self-trust, reparenting yourself. What that sounds like is I know how to care for myself, trusting your own judgment, knowing that you can do it, whatever obstacle is in your way. Structure and certainty. So looking like following a schedule, having a list, a grocery list, a to-do list, keeping busy. This sounds like I need to know, I feel better knowing what's next, or can you tell me the plan for this trip? So again, very much wanting to know the schedule, wanting to know the list of stuff to be done, where you're going, what you're doing. And then we have, okay, it's working with me now, sorry. And then we have sensory experiences, quality relationships, protective measures, closeness, and proximity. For sensory experiences, it looks like aromatherapy, time outdoors, listening to music, enjoying your favorite food. Aromatherapy, some people love, some people don't. Again, depending on where you fall on these routes, the people that you are working with, depending where they fall on these routes. It sounds like I need to go for a walk, clear your mind of things, putting on a TV show in the background for noise. You are watching it or just for noise as you are doing something else. Taking a deep breath and smelling candles, going right into aromatherapy. Some people find this very relaxing. Quality relationships, so having a strong sense of community, connections with loved ones. And that sounds like saying something like, will you call me this afternoon? Knowing that you can trust others, or saying something like, my community will help me heal. For protective measures, setting firm boundaries, accountability, and connections, and self-sufficiency. What that sounds like is I can stand up for myself. It's okay for me to say no. Closeness and proximity, so looking like giving and receiving hugs, being near others. People find this, again, nice. Some people don't like it. And it sounds like, can you stay with me for a while, or help is nearby if you were to need it, and knowing that. So again, taking us back to the first 4, private retreat, common humanity, inner guidance, structure, and certainty. sensory experiences, quality relationships, protective measures, closeness, and proximity. So I'm going to launch a poll now for the routes of safety. Just one question here. Which route of safety do you seek out first when you are emotionally distressed? Not the people you work with, not people you know, but you personally. Whatever you pick will be anonymous. But no right or wrong answers here either. Feel free to take the poll from me. But on this slide, survivorship and routes of safety, domestic violence as a form of complex trauma, and knowing that trauma erodes safety, right? It builds tension, stress, and physical safety might not be accessible for a lot of victim survivors. Wanting to make it very clear, emphasizing the message that oftentimes escaping or leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for a victim survivor. This is when we see a lot of murder rates go up. People's lives are at stake. They have children, they have pets whose lives are also at stake, and they don't want to leave the abusive relationship or the abusive individual because it could lead to death. So sometimes physical safety, getting away from the abuse and the abusive individual, isn't even accessible to a lot of victim survivors, and it's not as easy as just grabbing your stuff and going. And there are multiple ways to access safety. So oftentimes we want to know what our options are so we can give these choices to victim survivors, but know them for ourselves. I'm going to end the poll now. Thank you, everybody, for taking the poll. No right or wrong answers here again. A lot of people are looking towards private retreat and quality relationships. We also have people saying inner guidance, sensory experiences, closeness, and proximity. Finding people that you trust, being able to step away from everything with private retreat, right? Quality relationships, people that you know, sensory experiences, inner guidance. Sounds good. Thank you all for taking that poll. I just realized I didn't share the results. Here are the results with everybody on what was picked. Thank you for taking that poll for me. Now, knowing all of these different paths of safety, emotional regulation, we're going to dive into part 2. So understanding safety planning, how does that play into all of this? So safety planning is kind of like a buzzword in the domestic violence world. Many people say it, but some may not know the specific details of safety planning, what goes into it, what does it look like. So once again, I have another poll for us. How familiar are you with safety planning? Feel free to answer that for me openly, honestly. But yeah, a safety plan is kind of like a playbook for surviving. So preparing ahead of time for what you'll bring, who you will call, what you'll need, where you will go. You know your situation best. You know your relationships best. So really making it personal to you and your wants and needs. Preparing is essential when trying to escape domestic violence because, again, leaving an abusive relationship is the most dangerous time for victim survivors. And so if they are going to really leave an abusive relationship or individual, we want to plan ahead and make sure that they get to safety safely without any sort of harm whatsoever done to them, their kids, or their pets, or their loved ones. So think of like fire drills almost, right? Like children in schools going through a fire drill. We practice even if there is no fire. We practice what that looks like, sounds like. You know, if you hear this sound going off, right, that means there's a fire. Everybody out of the school, out of the classroom. Tornado drills as well. Practice, walk through it, know what's to come, and kind of work with victim survivors because, again, they know their relationships best. They know when things escalate. They know when the abusive individual is angry or when things are about to take a really, really bad turn. So knowing the signs and knowing where to go and what to do when that happens is important. Thank you all for taking the poll. I'm going to end it now. If anybody is still taking the poll, submit your answers. Okay, perfect. Sharing the results with everybody. How familiar are you with safety planning? We have two answers. So I walked through an entire safety planning with someone before. Most people have. That's good to know. Some people say, I understand the basics, but haven't created one with someone. Okay. And as we go today, hopefully, you'll get to see what it looks like, what to do, how to approach it if you ever needed to. It seems like a lot of you already know what safety planning looks like and you've done it before, which makes me very happy. But again, if you do have questions and comments as we go, though, feel free to leave them in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for taking that poll. Here we have the components of a safety plan. So knowledge, basic needs, lifelines, and strategies. Knowledge includes warning signs, again, from the victim survivor, patterns of abuse, and self-understanding. Knowing when things are escalating, knowing when things can take a bad turn, and knowing when to walk away. We have basic needs, of course, your food, your water, any medications you might need, caring for your children as well if they need medications, where to go for safe shelter. You a lot of times need money, your lifelines, who you call, emergency contacts. You have your hotlines, emergency contact with friends and family members. Shelter numbers are good to know if you are looking for a shelter. Your therapist, your counselor, a trusted friend or family member, somebody that knows your situation. Maybe you can stay with them, or somebody that you want to keep in the loop about what's going on in your life. And then we have strategies. So knowing the routes out of the home, again, just like before, walking through like a fire drill, right? Or a tornado drill with children at school. Knowing when you're going to leave and how you're going to do it. Defensive postures if you have to defend yourself. Grounding and meditation if that is something that you find relaxing. But these all fall under strategies, what to do when you are going to leave an abusive individual, and what you can do to take care of yourself in the meantime. So here is Women's Advocate's own personalized safety plan that we have created and we walk through with a lot of victim survivors. I'm going to copy and paste it into the chat. Feel free to open it, take a look at it. We'll walk through it. But feel free to follow along as we go. I have that pulled up. Feel free to print it out and use it if you want when you are working with victim survivors. If you have your own personalized safety plan that you like to use and you would like to share in the chat, by all means, copy and paste that into the chat. I'd like to take a look at them. Maybe other people who have never safety planned before would like to kind of open that up and take a look. It can be different for different organizations. It could be different for different folks. And so it's just nice to kind of bounce off one another and share. Feel free to open up our safety plan and take a look. But here we have the emotional safety toolbox, kind of this imaginary toolbox that you can think about when working with victim survivors or for yourself if you were to escape an abusive relationship. So physical items that you might need, basic needs, your mental techniques, and lifelines. Your physical items may include things that bring you comfort, so a blanket, pillow. Again, people find aromatherapy very calming, so candles or scents. Comfort objects, especially for kids, if they have a favorite, favorite toy, favorite blanket that they like to bring with them. Even as adults, we have our own comfort objects. Snacks, beverages, drinks. Of course, you have your basic needs from water, food, again, your medication, your safe environment. And then for the mental techniques, people find box breathing helpful. Feel free to fill up your toolbox with whatever you find helpful and useful for you. Sensory relief activities, checklists, music or meditation is also a big one. Then we have, of course, again, the lifelines. So trusted friend or family member, somebody that you would like to keep in on the loop about what's going on, where you are going, your emergency contacts, therapists, counselors, crisis hotlines. If you're ever working with victim survivors who don't have any crisis hotlines, you now know about us at Women's Advocates. Feel free to let them know about us. Give them our crisis numbers. At the end here, you will get access to all of that. You can simply just look up Women's Advocates on Google. Our crisis line numbers will also pop up. Tell them about us, and have them call us if they are in need of any resources or guidance in trying to escape domestic violence. But it's just a little visual for all of us to kind of look at your emotional safety toolbox for your emotional needs as you are physically trying to get away, taking care of yourself emotionally. What do you need in there? Customize it to your own needs, customize it to the needs of the people that you work with. And then this is what an effective safety plan may look like. Individualized. People are on a different route in their journey. We want it to be individualized, addressed specifically to the person who is in need of help. We want it to be realistic, right? And practical, so designed to be used. Keep it safe for now, but we want it to be as realistic as possible. Revisit frequently and open to revisions. Life changes. You want to be able to go back to it, revise, again, keeping it realistic and then individualized to the person who needs it, and keeping it confidential, keeping it away from the abuser. If the victim survivor feels comfortable doing this, they can share it with a trusted person. That could be a friend or a family member or an advocate working in this field. Share with one trusted person if they wish to do so, just so this person is also aware of the plan, what needs to be done, what's going to happen if this person is to leave an abusive relationship. So you have access to our safety plan. We know what it needs to look like, all of the wants and needs, how it should look to make it effective. So this is the part where we're going to dive into the examples, creating a holistic safety plan, going step by step on what it may look like when we work with victim survivors in our shelter as well. When we safety plan with them, this is what it kind of looks like. So the example that we have on the screen is an individual named Tasha. Tasha is 32 years old and has one child, age 3. She's working full-time at a grocery store while she's waiting for an apprenticeship slot to kind of open at her favorite tattoo shop. Tasha's primary support system is her aunt and her small but very close-knit group of friends. Tasha has been in an abusive relationship with Robert, her child's father, for 5 years, and they lived together. So in the past, Robert was physically and sexually abusive, but lately that's been less prevalent, and he's used emotional abuse more. So she's left Robert twice since their child was born, but returned a few times after a few weeks. She returned both times with new ways to keep herself and her child safe. But Tasha knows that the relationship is abusive and has worked really hard for the past 2 years to create some emotional distance between herself and Robert. And now that she has had a stable job and a strong support system, Tasha wants to leave Robert for good. This is the example laid out for us, who Tasha is, what her life is like, who Robert is. So we're gonna dive deeper and kind of quote unquote work with Tasha to develop a safety plan. So let's assess the safety. Here are some things that we know about Tasha from what we just read. Is going off of the first one, is Tasha isolated? Not so much, or not at all. She talks with her aunt and she has a close-knit group of friends that she can talk to, hang out with. So she's not experiencing high levels of isolation. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but as of right now, from what we do know, she's not experiencing any sort of isolation. We don't know about physical safety. We know that Robert isn't as physically abusive anymore, but again, things can escalate. If it happened before, it can happen again. If it never happened before, it can still happen in the future, right? So what questions do we ask Tasha about her physical safety as she plans to leave? Thinking about, has Robert threatened to stalk or physically harm her or her child if Tasha were to leave? And just because physical unsafety isn't fully apparent to you doesn't mean it shouldn't be a concern. So always check in to see if the victim survivor has a concern about their physical safety, because again, they know their situation best. We then have emotional and verbal abuse. And we know from her story just now that emotional and verbal abuse is still going on because Robert has been more emotionally abusive as of recently, right? So we ask some things like, what does Robert say to her? How is he emotionally abusive? What are the things that he says to her? And how can she respond to Robert, even if she doesn't respond out loud verbally, knowing that things can escalate? Even if she can't respond verbally out loud, how can she respond in her brain? How does she keep herself grounded and have a strong sense of emotional well-being? We can always reinforce a strong sense of self for a lot of victim survivors, no matter what they're going through. And by doing so, people find affirmations very important and useful. I'm going to copy and paste some affirmations that we use at Women's Advocates. If affirmations don't work for you, feel free to not use it. If it does work for you, if you want to take a look at it, the link is in the chat. Say this to yourself, say these to the people that you work with. If you have other affirmations that you like to lean on, that you rely on, that you tell other people, or what you tell yourself and you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, by all means, feel free to do so. But this is just kind of how we assess working with victim survivors, or in this case, working with Tasha. Self-talk is the victim survivor self-image being based solely on what the abusive person says. Support system, right? Who does she have to support Tasha? And mover scales. Being able to get away from all of the abuse if she were to do so. What does that look like? So here it is. This is what our safety plan looks like at Women's Advocates. If you have it open from the link in the chat, you should probably already see it. If you don't, this is what it looks like. We have our personalized own safety planning. We have a couple steps. The first three that we are going to walk through is step 1, 2, and 3. Again, this is for Tasha. The example we have for Tasha. So for step 1, we have assessments. We have a full list of things that abusers tend to do to a lot of victim survivors, and we are going to read them out loud one by one, and have Tasha kind of cross off or let us know which one that she's experienced. And if what the victim survivor is experiencing is not on the sheet, feel free to write it down as well. But for example, Robert has pulled her hair, right? Talking with Tasha, going down, Robert has pulled her hair. Robert has cheated on Tasha, has called Tasha names or make her feel small, hit, slap, or punch Tasha in the past because he was physically abusive in the past. Tells Tasha what they can and can't wear, where they can and can't go. The partner threatens suicide if they were to leave, force you to do something sexually that you don't want to do, call or text you constantly. So again, this is Tasha's example. Everything that she crossed off on assessment number 1 are the things that Robert has done either in the past or still as of right now, as of recent. And then as we know a little bit more about her situation, we're going to jump into part 2, warning signs. So she knows her situation best. She knows when things are going to escalate. Some warning signs that she can list down here is Robert comes home after drinking too much and is slurring his words. This can lead to abuse, or Robert begins ridiculing me for something he thinks I should have done differently. This can also lead to a lot of abuse. In Tasha's case, Robert makes threats to take my child away from me. Another form of abuse that Robert is making towards Tasha. These are the 3 warning signs where things are going to escalate. Things can get really bad. And we want to be able to prepare for it. So when any of these things happen, we want to make sure that Tasha is well prepared to not get harmed, for her child to be safe as well. You are not able to access it. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Yes. Afterwards, all of this information, the safety planning, everything will be sent out to you after the presentation. So either early tomorrow or a little bit later tomorrow, but you will receive it by tomorrow, I promise. Thank you for letting me know. But yeah, no problems at all. If you can't access it, you will have access to all of these later on. And I will go back and make sure that everything works so folks in the future can access a lot of these links. But yeah, warning sign, this is what it looks like. This is what Robert has done. These are what Tasha knows about her relationship. When things escalate, things can get really bad. So we want to be able to prepare for that. Step 3, we have some emergency contacts, just some already listed out for Tasha. Of course, calling 911. We have the Day 1 network connecting you to all sorts of different shelters in your area, in the Minnesota area, mainly. We have our number on the screen. If you'd like to keep our number on file so you can give to folks, it's on the screen. I'll also put it in the chat. So that is our number, our crisis number. So if you want to keep that on file, let people know about us in the Minnesota area. We'd be able and happy to help them, give them resources if they want to stay in our shelter. And if you have space available, absolutely would want to talk with these individuals. We have things like Restaurants Are United, people of different cultural backgrounds. And then, of course, having Tasha list out her emergency contacts, right? So we have Bree, her best friend, her aunt Rhonda, her friend Tiara, her advocates who she's working with, right? So if she was in an emergency situation where she would have to go to a safe place, where can she go? She can go to her aunt Rhonda's house. She can go to Bree's apartment. Feel free to list down any safety shelter resources on here as well. But we have this step 4, so the to-go bag. This can be an actual bag that Tasha has. She can list things out that she needs now. It's very similar to the emotional safety toolbox that we just looked at a couple of slides back. But what does she need, right? All of the physical stuff, mental health techniques, basic needs, personal needs, what is it all? We have vital documents, so things like birth certificates and her IDs, a set of clothes, change of clothes, cash or credit card, and her keys. That is the thing that she needs the most if she were to escape this abusive situation, relationship away from Robert. These are all the things that she would want to bring with her. She also has a child, so we want to talk about that as well. What does the child need? And in this case, for Tasha's child, they need medications, vital documents, and comfort items. We have a little space right there for pets as well, because a lot of times people, victim survivors, would not want to leave an abusive relationship without their pets. And so that is also there. If anything that they need isn't listed on here, feel free to just write it down. Have them write it down, have them keep it safe somewhere in their mind, write it down on a different piece of paper, be able to have these prepared when they are able to leave the abusive relationship. And then we have step 5. These are just some safety tips. We have some listed out already on the screen for them to know, right, what you can do, who you can call, installing security cameras, and making sure your doors are locked, especially if you are moving away and living on your own and away from this individual. You want to be safe. Places that they can go, their neighborhood, They can call their neighbor, tell their neighbor, or call 911. Numbers are on the screen who they can call, who they can kind of refer to. It's good for an advocate to know, a friend or family member to know about these things. Um, who they can talk to regarding their situation, who they trust to call 911 if they were to need help. In this case, who's going to call 911 if Tasha herself cannot call 911. Just all sorts of different safety places, but most importantly, places that the abuser knows of that the victim survivor stays or goes to that they would like to avoid. So for example, names at workplace, the local gym, every place is of the sort. So the abusive person is not able to find Tasha if she were to try and leave the abusive relationship. We then have the last part of our emotional personalized safety plan. This is the emotional safety part. Again, a lot of the safety plan from the beginning. Let me just go back quickly here. A lot of it is like physical, right? Who you can call, what you can do, where you can go, where you cannot go, who you can trust, what you need to grab, what you need to do to get away. And at the end, we kind of, again, want to bring it all back to holistic safety, emotional safety. What can Tasha do then to take care of herself and her child? What does she like doing? What does she find comfort and peace in? And a lot of it is drawing or sketching, joking with her friends. We have some on the screen as well, listening to music, hugging her child. And on the last part is what can I tell myself when I'm feeling down on myself, and circle those that apply and write your own. If the three that we provided on the screen isn't something that resonates with Tasha, she can write them down. So again, things like affirmations she can write down. So my flaws don't make me unlovable or deserving of violence. She also wrote down my home should be a haven of peace, warmth, and safety. And lastly, I am able to make decisions on my own. Bringing both folks back to relying on themselves, knowing that they can trust themselves is very important, especially in the long run. Being able to help themselves carry on their healing journey is very important, and we want to be able to help them in any way that we can when working with victim survivors. So again, this is what our safety planning looks like. This is what it sounds like. Everything that's on there. If you have safety plan before, you probably are very familiar with it all. If you have your own set of safety planning that you'd like to use and you find that it works for you, feel free to keep using that. Share with us if you feel comfortable. But here we have planning with unhoused survivors, right? So we know that there's a high correlation between domestic violence and housing instability. And you might encounter victim survivors of domestic violence who are staying at shelters or encampments, homeless shelters with their abuser, or unhoused survivors who have kind of separated from an abusive partner who is also unhoused. And so homelessness and domestic violence really a lot of times go hand in hand. A safety plan that asks about routes out of the home or private spaces probably won't be helpful for a lot of unhoused survivors, and wanted to be mindful of that. But you still want to ask about those abuse tactics and triggers in safe places to stay. Still go through the safety planning with them. When you're working with an unhoused victim survivor, you can ask questions like, where do you typically stay at night? Who are your close friends, and where do they stay? Are they also friends of your abuser as well? Do they talk with them? Where does your abuser spend time during the day? Where do they sleep at night? Do you know which bus routes they take? Where did they go where you can avoid them, right? So just like with Tasha, knowing that going to the local gym she needs to avoid because Robert might know that she's there. Even with unhoused survivors, asking them these questions as well. Where can you go to avoid this individual, this abusive individual? Where are places you can go to kind of spend time during the day away from your abuser? And we have on the screen some less relevant, excuse me, and more relevant stuff to ask and kind of focus on when working with unhoused survivors. So again, routes out of the home, private spaces, community routes, possibly, maybe, if they use those. But if working with an unhoused survivor, focusing on day center locations where they are staying, basic needs being met, transit routes, places to kind of spend time away from the abusive individual, there's still a lot we can do to help even unhoused survivors with their situation. And as you're working with victim survivors, if you are not comfortable or if you don't know what to say or how to help a lot unhoused survivors, feel free to refer them to us or a shelter, a domestic violence shelter, to talk more about that. So on this slide, if Tasha's goal were to be that she wanted to stay in her relationship, her safety plan would look very different. And on the screen are some more things to kind of take into consideration. Going back to allowing victim survivors to make their own choices, even if they choose to stay in the abusive relationship with the abusive individual. It is not really our place to tell them that they can't do that. We can lay out the truth, right? Everything on the table, like, hey, this is what you are going through right now. This is what you can possibly be going through. You have a child, right? That child can be going through this and that. And leaving an abusive relationship is, yes, the most dangerous time for a victim survivor. Being real and authentic about the facts, what you are able to help them with, what you are able to provide them with at the time. And if they choose to still go back and stay in the abusive relationship, you let them make their own choices and allow them to do what it is that they think is best for them, even if it's not the choice that you would make personally. And it's hard. A lot of times it's very, very hard. But if Tasha wanted to stay in the abusive relationship, it would look very, very different for her safety planning. Her go-to bag or her emotional safety toolbox that we kind of talked about would look very different. What she needs in there would be very different. But yeah, planning with survivors in contact with the abusive individual can be very different. A lot of times, we have to also set our own firm boundaries in place as advocates, as individuals working with victim survivors when this is the case. So making it very clear, not sugarcoating anything, but also helping this individual in a very different, separate route in working if they are still trying to stay in the abusive relationship or if they are still in contact with the abusive individual. So just a reminder, self-determination equals safety. So safety means freedom of choice. Again, leaving or eliminating abuse might be unrealistic overall. We are still, till this day, trying to end the cycle of domestic violence. It always skyrockets. The numbers, the cases go up all the time. We want to do our part in trying to help folks get away from abuse. Knowing what the desired outcome is, stick to survivors' measures of success, and keep judgments intact. Any and every time we can help a victim survivor kind of self-determine what it is that they want and need can lead to a lot of safety, even if not right away. Even if it's a slow journey there, it will lead to more safety. Educating about domestic violence lead people to a lot more safety. People can avoid domestic violence and abuse altogether if they know that there are people out there to help them, if they know what abuse is, what abuse looks like and sounds like, they're able to help themselves further. So promoting safety, these are just some tips for advocates. Whether you are an advocate, even if you're not, these are still good to know for people in your lives, friends, families that may be going through abuse. Share in the chat if you'd like, or just think about it to yourself for a second. What else can you say to promote safety? So on the screen help survivors feel comfortable and in control. So promoting safety may sound like whether you are thinking, whatever you are thinking and feeling, you are welcome here. We want you and your kids to feel safe and welcome. If something doesn't seem right, let us know and we'll work on it with you. You've been through a frightening experience. Our building is always locked and our location is confidential. But if there's anything else that would make you feel secure, let us know. Just some example of what can be said to promote safety when working with victim survivors. Some really real things that we have said at Women's Advocates to promote safety, knowing that our shelter is confidential and that the victim survivors and staff are safe. If there's anything else that you'd like to kind of say to promote safety, feel free to leave them in the chat. Somebody said, you are the expert in your own life. We are here to help when you are ready. Yeah, I love that. And it, you know, again, builds a sense of safety, right? Knowing that somebody is there with you and they're not going to pry into your life or your experiences. You are in control of your life and you get to tell your story when you are ready. That is a very, very good way to put it and plan it out. Thank you to the person who put that in the chat. Somebody said, there was a slide that mentioned move. I wonder if it was referring to move as assistance for domestic violence situations. Absolutely, yeah. I think that was a couple slides back. I'm unable to see it now, but yes, I'm pretty sure that is what it is. Mover's assistance if you are in a domestic violence situation. If you would like more information on that, as well as we end tomorrow, as I send out a lot of these emails to you, we'll add more information on that as well. Let me know if that is something that you would like to have more of, or information that you'd like to have more of or have on hand. On this slide, again, if our safety planning that we kind of walk through isn't really for you, you think something should be switched around, it can be changed, or it just wasn't something that you would use personally, that's totally fine. We have a lot of other safety planning templates on the screen, including ours to a lot of other organizations, from the National Domestic Violence Hotline to personal safety planning from Love is Respect, who we love, self-care plan templates. I am going to add a chat into, or a link into the chat. I was going to say a chat into the link, a link into the chat. It's the support planning checklist. And as you folks are opening up these chats or these links, if you are unable to open them, can you please let me know so I can go in and double check afterwards to make sure that they are all working. There's a lot of links to kind of go through. And so sometimes maybe one or two doesn't work. And I can go in and make sure that they do work, but there are just a link for support planning checklists in the chat for you. A lot of these are available to you again afterwards to kind of take a look at if the Women's Advocate safety planning just wasn't your cup of tea. These are just some further resources. We are reaching the end of today's webinar regarding safety planning. We've talked about a lot of the assessing, what our safety planning looks like, doing an example with Tasha, the routes of safety, everything of the sort. So we have reached the end now. If you have any questions, comments, please do leave them in the chat. Stick with me for a little bit here as I add some more links into the chat. But thank you all for coming today. We walked through a lot of the examples. Hopefully it was helpful on what that looks like. Again, a lot of you said you already did a lot of safety planning on your own as well. So hopefully this was useful still for you. If you have any information that you would like to share with everybody else in the chat, feel free to do so. Again, a lot of links coming your way. This is just a post-webinar survey. for you. Would be great for us to kind of know and get feedback from you. But at the end here, we have reached the end regarding safety planning, what that looks like, sounds like, having access to our personalized safety planning, the different routes of safety that you can take, where you kind of land on these safety planning routes. I'm going to copy and paste a lot of these links into the chat, so bear with me. You can scan the QR code on the screen if you would like access to the slides that we looked at today. If not, the link is in the chat. Feel free to click on that link and have access to a lot of the slides. And feel free to kind of revisit a lot of the information that we kind of just talked about. Download a certificate of attendance for being here and listening to me talk and talk about safety planning, everything of the sort. You deserve a certificate of attendance. That is in the chat for you. And the last link I'm going to add in the chat now is just joining our monthly listserv. Keep up with us, know about events that we may be having. If you have any questions, comments, reach out to us on the email on the screen. I'm actually going to add another email in the chat. education@wadvocates.org for information if you want resources, more information. If you have questions about today's webinar, if you have questions about different webinars, feel free to reach out to us on that email. We will be in touch with you.